Buckle in, sports fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show. The program will be starting in just a couple of minutes, so grab your popcorn and get ready to enjoy the show. While you're waiting, make sure you're following us on social media at WHBC Stream and staying tuned to WHBCStream.com. We're so glad to have you today on the program, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line on Twitter or call the show 352-639-0036. And thanks again for tuning in.
HBC. Well, it is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here on this Friday night on the William Haynes Show at 10:13 with 5 seconds to go right along with it. We will be with you right up until 11 o'clock, so about a 45-minute show tonight. Of course, talking tonight's Rays 2-0 win over the Miami Marlins. I believe their fifth straight over the Marlins dating back to last season. The Rays now also advanced to a season high water mark, 11 games above 500, and at least for right now, advanced their lead in the American League East to 3.5 games. The New York Yankees are up 3-1 in their game against the Mets in the fifth inning, so we'll keep our eyes on that while we are on the air again until 11. The number to call if you're interested, you want to talk Rays, also some Lightning. Their game was postponed tonight against the Bruins, but they will play, I believe, tomorrow at noon. They are up 2-1 in that series. So if you want to talk about Lightning as well, the number to call is 877-566-1020. Internationally toll-free number. We have a line open and would love to hear from you. Again, we'll take your calls up until 11 o'clock. Also have some other things to discuss. The Rays making a lot of roster moves as we had anticipated they would. There was a lot of talks that the Rays were active as far as the trade deadline is concerned. I'll talk about it after we go over the game, tonight's game inning by inning, but it was Brett Phillips, the outfielder, coming over from the Royals in exchange for one of the top prospects, Lucius Fox, an infield type guy. I believe he was a top 30 prospect and also kind of a lower level pitching move. The Rays dealt right-handed pitcher Riley O'Brien to the Cincinnati Reds for left-hander Cody Reed, who they expect maybe to be an opener in the near future because Brett Phillips is going to take a little bit of time with the intake testing, I guess, with the COVID-19. He doesn't have it, but as far as coming over to a new team, it's a little bit harder with trades this year, so I think they're hoping to see them at some point maybe next week. So we'll talk about all that after we do inning by inning breakdown in about 5 minutes or so. We'll take a 2020 sports break, and we'll give you all the baseball scores that are happening right now. No NHL, no NBA tonight, but we will talk about maybe some contests that will take place over the weekend, and of course we also do have to preview the two Rays games that will be taking course on Saturday and Sunday because we will not be on the air those two nights. On Saturday it'll be Josh Fleming v. Pablo Lopez, and on Sunday it will be Blake Snell going against Humberto Mija of the Miami Marlins. So a couple of interesting matchups. Again, the Rays won 2-0 tonight and advanced to 22-11. And I guess without further ado, again, I'll give you the call-in number once more before really diving into this. We have a line open. You can call anytime. We'll take it live on the air. It is 877-566-1020 at WHBC Stream is the Twitter. If you're interested in reaching out to us on there as well, that is perfectly fine. So talking tonight's game, we'll start with the lineup and defensively first. From the outfield from left to right, it was Meadows in left, Margot in center, as Kiermaier is still doing with some back issues, but he should be ready maybe at some point this weekend. And in right field, it was Brandon Lau. He started the game there and then moved into the infield mid-game. And then from the infield from left to right, it was Yandy Diaz at third, Willie Adames at shortstop, Joey Wendell at second, and at first base it was G-Man Choi. Mike Zunino was originally slated to catch, but he had, an oblique issue, and he was scratched. Michael Perez came in and performed quite admirably on both sides of the ball. Did well defensively with a caught stealing and some good blocks, and also adding in the second of the Rays' 2 runs to give them some insurance. Also, an update on Yarbrough. I know some people are probably curious about that. He left the game after 6 2/3 innings and only 80 pitches. It was with a left groin tightness was the issue. And just now from Mark Tompkin at the Tampa Bay Times, Rays Kevin Cash says Yarbrough has been managing the groin issue for a while. It was not a surprise. They don't seem overly concerned as of now. One thing I have not seen discussed recently, but it was talks going into the season. Usually, obviously, with the MLB season starting in March or April, and you go to the cold weather cities, you kind of get ready for the heat of summer. And obviously, I've lived in Florida my whole life, and most of you people listening that are Rays fans, I'm sure, are familiar with the Florida climate. It's really hot and humid, and when you start your season right in the middle of it, especially in Miami, where it is just very hot and very humid all the time, that was a concern around Major League Baseball, was kind of muscle issues, pulling, tightness, cramps, all that kind of thing. And I know, we're halfway through the season. Yarbrough has, had 4 or 5 starts up to this point, and still has not gotten a win, unfortunately. Has not recorded a Major League win in about a calendar year, which is just kind of bizarre to think about. So to that extent, maybe that was the reason why he was dealing with it. They mentioned on the radio broadcast with Dave and Andy on 620 WDAE that inside talks was Yarbrough was having a groin issue for a little bit there. He was slated to pitch last night against the Orioles at home in Tropicana Field, and of course the game got canceled right before it got up and going. It was I guess it wasn't conveyed to the players whether or not they were going to play or not until kind of right at 6:40 when first pitch was scheduled. So Ryan Yarbrough was the last person basically on the field doing some long tosses and things like that, because obviously when you build up to pitch on every 5th day and then you don't end up starting a Major League game, you kind of have to go through some stuff just to keep your body where it should be and keep that routine, so you still do have to do some high intensity throwing. So I don't know maybe how that affects his approach going into tonight. He did look very good. No walks, only 4 hits across 6 2/3 innings of no run ball, 5 strikeouts, and again a very highly efficient 80 pitches, 57 of which were for strikes. But he was slated to maybe go 7. I think going a full 8 innings was a stretch, but you could have maybe foreseen him starting an 8th inning. But the bullpen was in pretty good shape. I'm not sure how they line up now with Diego Castillo going 21 pitches, but we'll talk about that. I know I've kind of run a little bit long, and speaking of that, we are already on the first 2020 sports update of the show at 10:20. Again, number to call during the break is 877-566-1020. We are going to give you the baseball scores from tonight, take a short commercial break, and then we'll be right back and give you the inning-by-inning breakdown of tonight's Rays 2-0 win. HBC. A couple of games that have gone final, also some postponements. The Astros and Athletics was postponed. Also, the Tigers and Twins had a doubleheader that was postponed due to weather. Obviously, the Rays 2-0 over the Marlins. It was the Reds 6-5 over the Cubs. In 10 innings, it was the Blue Jays 5-4 over the Orioles. In the first inning of a doubleheader, it was the Mets coming back 6-4 over the Yankees. And in game 2, in the bottom of the 5th, it is the Yankees up 3 10-1 over the Mets. Current action right now, we go to the top of the ninth. It's the Braves and Phillies tied at 4. In the 7th, the Royals and White Sox also tied at 4. In the bottom of the 8th, it's the Nationals 10-1 over the Red Sox. In the 7th, it is the Dodgers and Rangers locked at 2. In the 7th, the Brewers 8-0 over the Pirates. In the 5th, it is the Indians 8, Cardinals 2. In the 5th, it is the Padres and Rockies tied at 4. And then a couple of games on the West Coast. In the bottom of the 2nd, it's the Diamondbacks 1-0 over the Giants. And in the 3rd, it is a scoreless game between the Mariners and the Angels.
Hey, sports fans! William's currently in the can, but he'll be right back. We're currently on a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us at 352-639-0036 or drop us a line on Twitter at WHBCStream to tell us what's on your mind. We want to talk sports. We want to get unruly. We want you to tell us what you think so we can argue. Anyway, when all that's said and done, please stay tuned for William's world-famous Around the XFL podcast and other projects that he's currently got in the works. Please visit WHBCStream.com, and thanks again for listening in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 66. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 10:22, we are back on the William Haynes Show. We will be with you up until 11 o'clock, talking tonight's Rays win and previewing the two contests that will take place between the Rays and the Marlins over the course of this weekend. Also have some roster moves to kind of go over as well. So a lot to kind of unpack. And if you would like to get some thoughts about the Rays or whatever sports thoughts you have on your mind off your chest, I'm here for you and taking your calls at 877-566-1020. At WHBC Stream is the Twitter if you want to tweet at us on there. I had a couple of notes from Mark Tompkin on Twitter over the break, the first of which was Kevin Cash saying they don't know if Yarbrough will miss time. Noted he didn't come out of the game hurt, that he came out because, quote, he didn't want to overexert it. And also a quote from Yarbrough, he said, he kind of felt it a little bit on a few pitches and doesn't know yet if he'll miss time. His first instinct is that it is not too bad. So my gut reaction to that is we are not talking a stint on the injured list. Of course, I think at this point it's 9 pitchers on the injured list currently for the Rays, a couple of starters with Morton and Yonny Chirinos, the second of which Yonny is having Tommy John surgery, so he'll be out all of next year as well. But Morton hopefully will come back at some point, maybe even starting a game against the Yankees next week. But obviously a lot of slew of relievers as well. So I think having Yarbrough, if he is good to go by his next start, that seems like a stretch to me. He may skip a turn through the rotation, and at that point, they could talk themselves into putting him on the injured list because it would just be for 10 days. I'm not quite sure who they would bring up. I know there's been a lot of talks about Shane McClanahan and maybe even Shane Baz, but those are some guys that aren't experienced in the major leagues yet, so I don't know if they want to throw them to the fire, especially with a series against the New York Yankees coming up. It looks like Yarbrough's next scheduled start is on Wednesday, September the 2nd, against the New York Yankees, against Jordan Montgomery. So again, they're going to have to figure something out also in that Yankee series. If not Morton, which even if he comes back, we're probably talking 3 or 4 innings, it'll be another Trevor Richards start or a Trevor Richards bulk behind an opener. So I'm not feeling too good about that Yankee series, but of course you have to take it one game at a time, and we have 2 games upcoming against the Marlins, so you can only beat who's in front of you right now, but that's just kind of a peek ahead on what the Rays are going to be looking at as far as the rotation is concerned. And again, we'll keep our eyes kind of on the Yarbrough stuff as we go throughout that show, as that really is kind of the main takeaway. Of course, a win is a win, but more of the same for the Rays as well as far as the pitching injuries are concerned. I guess first kind of takes on Yarbrough looks good. Hopefully no stint on the injury list, but maybe miss a time or so through the rotation. We'll have to wait and see. Again, it was left groin tightness, which caused him to leave the game. In the 7th inning, he was rolling, had only thrown 80 pitches, so that was kind of unfortunate to see him come out of the game early. When we left off, we were kind of talking about how the Rays lined up. We gave you the defensive alignment, how they lined up on the lineup card. It was Austin Meadows leading off, which made sense against the righty Sanchez. It was Sixto Sanchez getting, I think, his second or third start in the major leagues. So Meadows led off, followed by Lau and Diaz. Choi cleaned up. Adames and Wendell, and a bottom 3 of Margot, Tsutsugo, and Perez. I liked that bottom 3, and it ultimately did end up panning out with Margot going 2 for 3 and working a walk as well. So he reaches base 3 times, which in the 7th spot is good, but Tsutsugo didn't give you much. He goes 0 for 3, did work a walk, though, in, I believe, a crucial spot. And then, obviously, Michael Perez goes 1 for 4, 3 strikeouts, but does knock in the second run, which proved to be very large in the bottom of the 9th inning as Diego Castillo kind of became unraveled just a little bit. So inning by inning breakdown, of course, we start at the top of the first. It was Sixto Sanchez making it look easy. He got Meadows and Lau to strike out in really bad at-bats, and then he got Yandy Diaz, I believe, to ground out as well. So he got to his hot start. I believe his last start, he got his first major league win against the Washington Nationals, and he went 7 innings pitched tonight with only 92 pitches. So that kind of gives you an idea of where he's at. 6 hits, no runs, a walk, and 10 strikeouts. So he really made the Rays hitters look kind of silly tonight. Bottom of the first inning, Ryan Yarbrough gets settled in it himself. It was Birdie, the leadoff man, getting things started with an infield single, and then former Ray Corey Dickerson moves him over. It was kind of a weird play where Ryan Yarbrough, it was kind of a soft ground ball halfway towards first base, and Ryan Yarbrough and catcher Michael Perez were both kind of going for it. And Yarbrough was on the ground, and it was just by a couple of inches that Michael Perez's cleat spike missed Yarbrough's hand, so that could have been a whole nother issue to talk about. So that was kind of a scary play, but they get Dickerson at first. Birdie was caught stealing, going for third. It was a really good caught stealing by Michael Perez, and that was kind of one of his biggest marks on the game. But of course, he did well offensively late in the contest, as he has tended to do. And then Yarbrough got things finished in the first by getting Brian Anderson to strike out. We go to the top of the second. The Rays leave a couple of base runners. It was Choi with the leadoff single. Adames strikes out. Wendell strikes out, so it's a man on with 2 out. Then Margot works a walk, so you get a man in scoring position early on in the contest, and then Yoshi Tsutsugo grounds out. And this was kind of something I wanted to say, and something they were talking about on the radio broadcast as well. With Tsutsugo obviously coming from the Japan League, he was pretty much one of the biggest stars in that league, but obviously not as good competition, especially as far as the pitching is concerned. Mostly faced opposing pitchers that were throwing pretty much low 90s. So you get thrust into Major League Baseball where guys are consistently throwing upper 90s and 100s. And Sixto Sanchez was touching triple digits on the radar gun tonight. And that's something that's kind of been the talk around Tsutsugo all season long, is, we see what he can do against kind of some soft tossers, and he's hit a couple of home runs, but against really the power pitchers, and he struggled. His batting average is now down to 173, although his on-base percentage is 306. That's not great, but he has been working some walks. Certainly a guy with a patient eye. I think, a leadoff hitter in the Japan League. So, I mean, he's a good baseball player. He's well-balanced, not terribly defensively either, but kind of, again, which has been the trend, struggled against the power pitcher in Sixto Sanchez, who looked really good for the Marlins tonight. So he grounds out. That leaves a couple of men on base. The Rays did not do great in that department either. They go 2 for 6 with runners in scoring position, which ultimately is not too bad, but they left a total of 9 men on base, which has certainly been a trend for the Rays, unfortunately, this year, although to the tune of a 22-11 record, which is one of the best in Major League Baseball and good enough for a 3.5 game lead in the American League East. Depending on how the Yankees and Mets game goes, it could be just a 3-game lead, but we'll keep our eyes on it. I think that game is in the late stages. Bottom of the second, Ryan Yarbrough heats up a little bit. Some favorable calls from home plate umpire Paul Nart, and I know that's probably one of the biggest takeaways for a lot of people that watch that game. Paul Nart, the home plate ump, was not consistent. I know that's kind of a point of contention with players, especially batters, but I guess even pitchers in some circumstances as well. If a home plate ump is going to call a zone that they don't agree with, it's somewhat acceptable, I guess you could say, if the ump is consistent with it. But Paul Nart was all over the place. A pitch could be in the same spot, one in the first inning, one in the sixth, in the same exact spot. And in the first inning, Paul Nart would call it a strike, and in the sixth, he would call it a ball. He was kind of all over the place. Sixto Sanchez, I couldn't imagine trying to be a home plate ump behind the catcher there. Throwing triple digits with movement. I mean, he's got a wicked fastball. He looked really good tonight. And then kind of the deception that Ryan Yarbrough does as well. He not often touches 90 miles an hour, pretty much in the high 80s. But with his release and everything, that ball comes on you pretty quick. So I guess, not necessarily give him a break. He is a major league umpire for a reason, but that was kind of a big kind of trend throughout the game was it kind of swayed both ways. It wasn't necessarily in the Rays or Marlins' favor. I guess maybe the Marlins could complain about it because they lost, but Ryan Yarbrough did favor from it in the second inning. He got Cooper and Villar to strike out to start, and then Alfaro to fly out, so it was a 1-2-3 inning. And also of note, Ryan Yarbrough, he was very efficient, did not have an inning where he threw, I think, more than 14 pitches and had some around 10 or so. So he was really getting Marlins hitters out with ease. Top of the third inning, it was Paul Nart struggling again, and Sixto was absolutely dealing. Michael Perez struck out. Meadows reached on a first pitch single. The significance in that was it was an ugly 3-pitch strikeout in his first at-bat, and then immediately comes back and swings on the first pitch fastball, so that was kind of good to see him make an adjustment going into a second at bat. Obviously, mid-game adjustments are huge this day and age. Lau strikes out, but it was a questionable call, and then Yandy Diaz grounds out to end things. We go to the bottom of the third. Yarbrough works around a one-out double. It was Brinson with that one-out double, a rocket down the left field line. Yandy Diaz, obviously not a great defensive third baseman. He did play a decent game defensively, but his reaction east-west is not great. He does pretty good on charging on balls, coming up to get him. But as far as diving to either side or, putting the glove down has not been great. And it was, in all fairness, the exit velocity did look pretty good, and it was a rocket down the left field line, and Brinson reaches on a double, so all of a sudden the Marlins get a runner in scoring position in a scoreless game. The 9-hole hitter Rojas grounds out, and then they go back to the top, and Yarbrough gets birdie to ground out, so that was good for Yarbrough to kind of work around that defensive miscue, I guess you could maybe say, but it was ruled a hit, obviously, so you give credit, I guess, to the Marlins. Top of the fourth, we have a pitcher's duel on our hands. Sixto Sanchez gets Choi to strike out, Adames to ground out, and Wendell to strike out in an easy 1-2-3 inning. Bottom of the fourth, Yarbrough gives up a hit, but that's it. And through four, had only thrown 46 pitches again to the effect of his efficiency tonight. Went almost 7 innings and threw only 80 pitches. And without the groin issue, I think he would have obviously gotten through a 7th and probably would have started an 8th, just to give the bullpen kind of a continued break. We go to the top of the 5th. It was the 7, 8, 9 hitters do what you would expect, and that was go down relatively easy. Margot reached on an infield single. He's been great at running out those kind of ground balls. And then Yoshi, of course, grounds into a double play, so Sixto Sanchez gets what he wants in the weak contact. And then Michael Perez strikes out to end the inning. We go to the bottom of the 5th. It was Yarbrough working a 1-2-3 inning of his own. It was an Alfaro, which is a speedy guy for the Marlins, grounded out. It was a good charge by Yandy. Really came up to get it. A good pickup and a good throw over to first. So honestly, he had more good plays defensively than bad, which is a good sign to see because he has not looked absolutely fantastic in that department this year. And then we go to the top of the 6th. The Rays leave the second man of the game in scoring position. It's stranded. It was Meadows striking out. Brandon Lau hits a single. Yandy Diaz moves him over. on a ground ball. Again, that was only the second time in the game the Rays had a runner in scoring position. That was in the 6th inning, so the offense was not looking great against Sixto. And then Choi grounds out, I believe, to end things. Yeah, so they leave another guy in scoring position. They were 2 for 6 in that department here tonight. Specifically, it was Perez and Yandy Diaz picking up the 2 hits that scored the runs, but Choi 0 for 1, Lau 0 for 1, and Tetsugo 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position, so that's not necessarily what you want to see. I think Brandon Lau, the home run in their last game was good to see, but I don't think he's totally out of the slump yet. He goes 1 for 5 tonight with 3 strikeouts. His average is down to 292, an OBP of 389, so obviously still doing very well statistically. But that hot stretch, especially during that road trip where they went 9-1, is kind of fading a little bit, at least I would say. And then we go to the bottom of the 6th. Ryan Yarbrough gets through a 6th inning, and it was only 69 pitches, so again, very nice pacing for Yarbrough. It was the 9-hole hitter Rojas to strike out to start things, so that's good to kind of get those out of the way, get those outs easily, which he did. Birdie single. It was a really good play by Yandy. I believe it was another charge and a flip over to first that was really good and pretty accurate of a Birdie, a leadoff hitter, and a speedy guy at that. Was able to run it out as you would expect. Dickerson flew out, and then Anderson flew out, so he got the top of the order with relative ease, and again, the pacing at that point was very good as well. We go to the top of the 7th inning. Sixto gets through a 7th. It was Adames stealing, Adames with a leadoff single to start the inning, and then another caught stealing on a play where this is the second time this year they've done that. Adames reaches, and then they do, I don't know if it was a hit and run with Wendell, but that's the second time those two guys have been involved in a play like that, and Adames is caught stealing. Wendell then goes on to ground out, so instead of having a man on with nobody out, it's bases empty, 2 outs. Margot hits a single and steals a base of his own on a 2-2 count, on a 2-2 pitch to Yoshi Tsutsugo, and then Yoshi would end up grounding out in that at bat again. So I guess another failed at bat for Yoshi with the runner in scoring position, although it did not start that way. Bottom of the 7th, of course, it was Ryan Yarbrough with the early exit. It was Cooper to fly out. VR popped out, so all of a sudden 2 quick outs, and then in the at bat to the next man, who I believe after VR was Alfaro, the catcher. So I think I made a mistake on that earlier where I said Alfaro was a fast runner on the Yandy Diaz play. Alfaro was not a speedy guy who was the catcher tonight, so just make that correction. Yarbrough comes out during that at-bat. Fairbanks comes in, immediately hits Alfaro with a pitch, so you think, oh boy, here we go again. It was a scoreless game, but then gets Diaz to fly out to end things. And then we go to the top of the 8th. The Rays take a 1-0 lead. It was Meadows hitting a 1-out single after Michael Perez struck out to start things, so you get a runner on with 1 out. Brandon Lau moves him over, so all of a sudden he's in scoring position once again. Blyer comes out, so they had taken out Sixto Sanchez going into the 8th inning against Sixto's line. Again, 7 innings pitched, no earned runs on 6 hits, only 1 walk, 10 strikeouts, and both teams combined only 2 walks. That was kind of fun to watch. This game did go by very quickly. I don't know the exact time, but it did feel like it went by in a rush. And it was Blyer that ended up being on the tag for the loss. So once Meadows gets to second, they take him out. Former Ray, Brad Boxberger, comes in, and it was Yandy Diaz hitting an RBI single. And he, a clutch moment for him. He has not looked great, I guess, in that department this year. Has worked good at bats, but seemingly never really in the clutch per se. He's now batting .350 in the month of August. That was from the radio broadcast, I believe, from Dave Wills on 620 WDAE. So obviously he has been a huge part of the Rays' success lately. He drives in what would be the game-winning run, and then Renfroe comes on to pinch run, which I believe was just convenient to maybe keep the inning going, and also I think they were going to make that a defensive change anyway, and then Choi strikes out with Renfroe standing at first to end things. But going into the bottom of the 8th, it was a Rays 1-0 lead. Going into the bottom of the 8th, it was Fairbanks working an efficient inning. The defensive adjustments they made, it was Renfroe going out to right field, Lau, who's previously there, moves to second, which kicks Wendell out to third, and that goes again. I know we had a caller, I believe, a couple days ago saying with the defensive versatility. It is unfortunate that some of those guys like Yandy Diaz, just because they can play a lot of positions, aren't great at them, but it does certainly help to have that ability to where you can make those late game substitutions and move Lau from the outfield to second base. You can keep him in the game and get maybe another at bat if you need out of him. And then Wendell, who's a great defender but also has a good bat, can hit for average. You can also keep him because he can also play third base. So it was really working all around and allows them to make defensive adjustments late in the game in the outfield as well, taking Lau, who's not as great in the right field, and putting Renfroe, who is pretty good, even though he's had some errors out there, but that was obviously a late game defensive substitution. But it was Fairbanks in the 8th inning gets Joyce, a pinch hitter, to fly out. Rojas flew out, and then Birdie, the leadoff man, struck out. So very good stuff from Fairbanks, who has really come on lately for the Rays. He gets the win tonight and improves to 4-1 in an inning and a third pitch. So he relieves Yarbrough in the 7th and then pitches that clean 8th. His only stat was a strikeout, but obviously no hits, no earned runs. 11 pitches, 8 of which were for strikes. His ERA is now at 3.07, and you look at his first pitch strikes, he faced 5 batters. 4 of them was for first pitch strike. And oh boy, would you believe this? I'm surprised I didn't see this looking at the notes. Ryan Yarbrough tonight faced 23 batters. If you had to guess how many batters he threw first pitch strike with his efficiency, what would you say? And what would you say if I told you that Ryan Yarbrough threw a first pitch strike to none of the 23 batters? So the first pitch in every at-bat was a ball. And that was probably due to the home plate umpire doing what he did. So, maybe you don't pin that exactly on him, but obviously you give Yarbrough credit to work around at-bats, and he didn't walk anybody either. So that's a really impressive stat. So obviously that makes you feel good about Ryan Yarbrough, and hopefully he can come back relatively quick and doesn't have to miss too much time. Top of the 9th, Michael Perez delivers. 2 runs will have to be enough because they do leave some meat on the bone once again, as they have tended to do this year. Brad Boxberger comes out. Smith comes in. Josh A. Smith. Adames was out to start the inning. Wendell reaches on what should have been an error, but they give him a hit, which obviously for Wendell and the Rays is good. You like to see him get that hit there. Obviously, that's kind of the new age of official scoring, as it's more likely to give guys hits. Margot moves him over, so all of a sudden you get another runner in scoring position, and Wendell at second base can probably score on a single. Yoshi, finally with a runner in scoring position, walks and doesn't record an out. And then Perez, an RBI single, that makes it 2-0 Rays. How clutch has he been? He has 7 RBIs on the year. 4 of those 7 had come in the 7th inning or later, and including a couple of go-ahead game-winning runs against the Yankees in that 4-game set in the Trop. So obviously, and one of them also against Zach Britton. So how clutch has Michael Perez been? And obviously, you kind of envision him as one of those kind of guys that doesn't stand out on the scouting report or anything like that, but when you need a clutch hit, kind of like what G-Man Choi has been, seems to always deliver late in a game. Meadows walks to load the bases. It was runners at the corners previously, so you think maybe, a base hit would blow this game open. It would make it 4-0, but of course Brandon Lau struck out tonight, and I guess that's kind of why I come and say that he's still in the slump, because that leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth. They make the substitutions, obviously, and keep him in the game. And then with the bases loaded, he strikes out to end the inning. So that was kind of unfortunate. And then it was an interesting bottom of the 9th. It was Diego Castillo coming on to face the 2-3-4 hitters. So obviously not an easy task. That was Dickerson, Brian Anderson, and Cooper, all of which have performed pretty well this year for the Marlins. And he started off very well. It was Dickerson that struck out. It looked like he was asking for a hit by pitch, but it was clear it wasn't. They even did a lengthy official review, but gets Dickerson to strike out to start things. Then Brian Anderson strikes out. So all of a sudden, it was 2 gone, bases empty, and I think he had only thrown 8 or so pitches. And that's something that Dave Wills talks about on the radio a lot, is to be a late inning reliever in a high leverage spot. Not only do you have to get out of spots without giving up runs and stuff like that, and be effective. You also have to be efficient, because if you're throwing 20 pitches every outing, in the 9th inning, you're not going to be able to pitch as much, because if you throw 20 instead of 10 pitches, you're probably going to need an extra day off and things like that. So I think it was about 7 or 8 pitches and had 2 outs. So you think maybe he'd be good to go tomorrow, and maybe he will end up. But things kind of unraveled on him a little bit. It was Cooper hitting a double, so all of a sudden they get a man on and bring the tying run to the plate. And VR, who ends up walking, so all of a sudden they get the tying run on first base, and obviously the home team, they could walk it off with a home run and probably tie it with a double, and Alfaro, the catcher, grounds out to end the game. So ultimately the Rays end up getting the win, and they get the shutout, the second of the season, the first of which was against the Yankees, and I think that 1-0 game on that Friday night, which was an absolute blast to be a part of, just watching the game. But it was Diego Castillo getting the save, his second of the year, recording saves in the team's last 2 games. An inning pitched, a hit, obviously that walk, and a strikeout. 21 pitches, 12 of which were for strikes. I would not imagine he'd be in play tomorrow, just because, pitching a lot like that, usually you get a day off, but 21 pitches is usually multiple innings. So if I was Kevin Cash, and I think this is where he would lean on this, Diego Castillo right now is your highest leverage reliever, and you want to make sure he's good for that Yankee series. I think with the bullpen getting the day off yesterday, with the postponement, you like how they line up against the Marlins these next 2 games. So just keep Castillo rested, and hopefully they can get Nick Anderson and Chaz Rowe and Oliver Drake back, and maybe Jose Alvarado at some point, and kind of get that A bullpen back and rolling like it should have been on the opening day roster. So that was the game. The Rays 2-0 over the Marlins. They advanced to 22-11 and increased their lead in the American League East to 3.5 games. It looks like the Yankees may take this one. I think it's just an inning left. The Yankees are up a run, so I think the Mets will get 3 more outs to work with. If the Yankees do win, the Rays lead will just be 3 games. But remember, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, 3-game set, the Rays Yankees in the Bronx. So that will be the final meeting in the regular season between those 2 clubs. So that'll certainly be pretty substantial and a big deal, and we'll be there all of those nights to cover it. At 10:46, we're about a few minutes late, but we are going to take another 2020 sports update. I'll just give you an update on the baseball scores, because that's all we have to talk about. No other scores. And we'll take a quick break after that and be right back. Again, final 10 minutes of the program or so. If you want to get on the air, we have a line open for you. If you want to call in, it is 877-566-1020. Here is the sports update. HBC. In the top of the 10th inning now, it is the Braves and Phillies tied at 4. In the 8th, it's the White Sox. They now have a 5-4 lead over the Royals. Top of the 7th, it is the Yankees 3-2 over the Mets. The Mets to take Game 1 of the doubleheader. In the 9th, it's the Nationals 10-2 over the Red Sox. In the 7th, the Rangers take a lead 6-2 over the Dodgers. In the 8th, it's the Brewers 9, Pirates 1. In the 6th, it's the Indians 10-2 over the Cardinals. In the 7th, it is the Padres with a 5-4 lead over the Rockies. Top of the 4th, Diamondbacks 3, Giants nothing. And in the 4th, it is the Mariners and Angels still scoreless. Again, number to call during the break, 877-566-1020.
Hey, sports fans! William's currently in the can, but he'll be right back. We're currently on a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us at 352-639-0036 or drop us a line on Twitter at WHBCStream to tell us what's on your mind. We want to talk sports. We want to get unruly. We want you to tell us what you think so we can argue. Anyway, when all that's said and done, please stay tuned for William's world-famous Around the XFL podcast and other projects that he's currently got in the works. Please visit WHBCStream.com, and thanks again for listening in.
WHBC. And at right about 10:50, we are back on the William Haynes Show. We've been running a little bit long, so maybe about 20 minutes left in the program. If you want to be a part of it, we do have a line open and would love to hear some of your thoughts. You want to talk about the Rays or whatever you've got on your mind. A line open again. It is 877-566-1020. At WHBC Stream is the Twitter. During the remainder of the program, we're going to talk about some of the roster moves the Rays have made as of late, and then preview the next two games over the course of this weekend, both against the Marlins. It'll be Josh Fleming v. Pablo Lopez, and Blake Snell versus it is Humberto Mejia, I think, of the Marlins. So a couple of interesting matchups there. But first and foremost, I think kind of the most important thing that we had to talk about. The trade did take place yesterday, but without any kind of games to talk about, we took a night off, and obviously we're here tonight to discuss the Brett Phillips coming over from the Kansas City Royals in exchange for infield prospect Lucius Fox. Really, the bottom line of this trade, the Rays have system infield depth. Obviously, Vidal Brujan, Xavier Edwards, Wander Franco in the minor leagues, and currently at the bigs, a couple of young guys that have a few more years of team control with Adames and Lau. So they really had a log jam. Obviously, we see them trade Jake Cronenworth over to the Padres, who ended up looking like he's probably going to be a good major league player. They did get Xavier Edwards back in that trade, so I'm not quite sure kind of what was going into that, but the way I would look at that is this, and I don't think anyone's really bellyaching about getting over Lucius Fox, but the way I envision the Rays going about this, Brandon Lau is the second baseman of the future. Joey Wendell probably does not have a future with his team. I think he's either 29 or 30, and I mean, either they trade him or, they don't re-sign him. If they can keep him for cheap, they will, because he can play second, third, shortstop, corner outfields when they need him, although he hasn't done that this year, but he can. He's valuable in that aspect, but not really. I love him a lot. I think he's a great player, hits for contact and all that. But obviously, Brandon Lau, he's under contract, I think, for the next 5 seasons. And then Adames will be getting a long-term extension, you would think, at some point. But maybe that's kind of the way they're working the prospects, is they may not re-sign him. The way I would imagine, kind of with a Derek Jeter and A-Rod situation, obviously Wander Franco is being brought up in the minor leagues as a shortstop. And maybe that's telling you something that Adames doesn't have a future with the team, but I think that would be kind of controversial to suggest such a thing, obviously with him being such a good player for the Rays so far. Within the next few years, whenever Franco is ready, I would imagine Franco comes up in the bigs and plays third base, because that's kind of been a hole in the Rays roster for a while. They've had Yandy Diaz play over there, but obviously that's not really his natural position. Same with Tsutsugo. Wendell can give you some time over there, but again, that's not a permanent fixture. He's going to be in his 30s. So I'd imagine the future will be Franco at third base. You have Adames at shortstop and Brandon Lau at second base. And then whatever comes of Vidal Brujan and Xavier Edwards, maybe, just some depth pieces. And obviously that's kind of something that they prioritize in their minor leagues, is guys that can have versatility across the infield. So I don't think it's a big deal getting rid of Lucius Fox. I think he was ranked 30th or so in our top list of prospects, so obviously not too big a deal. And you get a guy in Brett Phillips who obviously has potential, and you can kind of see when you do a deep dive. I want to give draysbay.com some credit, because I use their article for some of the stats that they had kind of pulled. So again, draysbay. It's a nice blog page that does Rays coverage. They do some good stuff over there. Brett Phillips, he has started at center field this year, but can play the corners as well. So another kind of one of those versatile outfield pieces. He's 26 years old. He's actually from Seminole High School, which, if you're not familiar with that, I believe is about 10 or 20 minutes north of Tropicana Field. And I also spoke to someone that, an insider source, if you will, that knew him, from his days in Seminole Middle and Seminole High School, and just some interesting stories. He's a really fun guy. He's cool to be around. And I asked him, obviously, because he was friends with him, if, if he stood out as someone that you knew would be a professional athlete, and he gave a story, they were playing Little League football and their team was getting blown out, so of course they're just kind of, screwing around, and they do the deep vertical to Brett Phillips down the sideline, and he just absolutely mosses the cornerback in a really cool play, and he said he knew from that point on he was going to be a pretty good athlete. So I thought that was kind of a good tidbit. Obviously, a local product, that's always good to see. And a guy that played so close to the Trop, you think he's got to be pretty amped to come to Tampa Bay. So that's kind of a cool thing, too. And, it's always good to keep those guys loose. It was kind of circling around a video of his laugh. He's got this big, goofy laugh. And I think the Rays, there's been value. Obviously, what they do with the sabermetrics. A clubhouse guy, you can't represent that on a stat sheet, but you know that the Rays value it. Obviously, guys like Guillermo Heredia, who they've had in the past, Sergio Romo, Carlos Gomez, even to an extent, although that's kind of a weird thing to say. They've always had these guys, and I think Brett Phillips, a young kid that brings some energy. That's also something they've talked about with Randy Arozarena, who they brought over from the Cardinals. So obviously, in Adames too, just young kids that love to play baseball, and that's a really cool vibe to have around the clubhouse as they kind of go through this weird season and into what should be a lengthy playoff run for years to come. So again, 26 years old, local product. Scouting report on him: he did have the strongest throw ever recorded on Statcast. It was 104 miles an hour from the outfield on an assist play in 2017. So he's got a rocket arm. Of course, you're starting to see the parallels to Kevin Kiermaier, a center fielder, a guy that's just a pure athlete. The story that I told you about, the football game. And a very strong arm. Kiermaier is known to have one of the strongest center field arms that you can't run on. So you're starting to see the parallels. Raw power, but a really low contact rate. There was an interesting stat table on D-Rays Bay on that article. I'll definitely recommend that you check it out. It's probably still on their front page. It's about Brett Phillips and maybe kind of their thought processes and what went into the trade. But Brandon Lau was also on that table as far as whatever stats they pulled that found guys that had raw power but low contact rate. So obviously the Rays, Chad Mottola, the hitting coach, and throughout the organization, they know kind of how to coach that. So you think maybe they can get him turned in the right direction. And look, obviously this isn't a trade that you want to pick apart. It's a good trade. But with the Rays' track record, I mean, you can't doubt any move they make because they always seem to work out. It was kind of funny every time the Rays make a trade, and it was the case with this one. I think it was a Royals fan. He's like, if I was the Royals GM and the Rays called me about a prospect that hadn't quite panned out, I would just hang up the phone immediately and look at what I was doing wrong in developing the player, because obviously the Rays see something in these guys that they acquire and end up making something out of it. Obviously, Yandy Diaz, a guy who hits the absolute cover off the baseball. The exit velocity is huge, but trying to get him more in the air, that was more so last year. He's gone back to his ground ball tendencies this season, but obviously you understand that parallel and what they've done with Austin Meadows and turning Tyler Glasnow around, as he was not a great player in Pittsburgh. So you see what the Rays do with these guys, and I think again with the raw power and the low contact rate, you see the potential for Brett Phillips to grow. Still a relatively young kid, 26 years old. He's played in 136 Major League Baseball games and he has had 358 plate appearances. That has amounted to a 205, 282, 344 slash. So if you're not familiar, I only say this because I was confused a year or two ago when I started kind of deep diving into that. The first number, 205 batting average. The second number, 282, is on base percentage. And the third number, 344, is his slugging, and also 9 home runs as well. So it's kind of yet to see his potential kind of hitting right at that Mendoza line for batting average. And I hadn't really thought of it this way, and I read it on D-Rays Band, that article, and ultimately, I mean, let's be honest about why this move was made. With all the outfield depth that they have, you think maybe there's room for a move if they have decided already that Hunter Renfroe doesn't have a future with his team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move on from him somehow. But obviously, Manny Margot, I think he's 25 years old and a bat that they can develop and a nice defensive piece that they want to keep. Yoshi, a guy, he's on contract for next year that could play the outfield. Obviously, Kiermaier, they have guys already in the outfield, so why are they bringing in this Brett Phillips character? And you start to look at where Kevin Kiermaier is at with the Rays. Kiermaier's 30 years old. obviously the Rays would know. They have the trainers looking at him and stuff like that. I'm thinking maybe Kiermaier's got a bit of a back issue, not just because of the back strain or whatever that he had in the last game in the middle of the at-bat, but just I never seen him do all this exorbitant stretching with the back before every at-bat, and you see him always stretching out the back in the outfield. I mean, he's getting old. 30 years old for a guy that does what he does. One of the fastest players as far as ground he can cover in the outfield and the crazy diving plays, banging into the outfield wall and things like that. So, I mean, it makes sense that could take a toll over time, and I'm not saying he has a bad back, but the Rays would know potentially if he did. He's 30 years old, and then you look at his contract, and this is not the Rays do not pay this kind of money to players. Obviously, they offered him the deal, and he took it. He was supposed to make $10 million this year. With the prorated, it's around $3 or $4 million, I believe. But next year, he is scheduled to make $11.5 million. In 2022, he is scheduled to make $12 million. And in 2023, he is scheduled to make $13 million. So that's a lot of money. And if he's not going to be healthy, he's not going to be himself. If he's not the outlaw, a platinum glove player in the center field, he's not worth that kind of money for the Rays. They can put that money elsewhere. I mean, they paid Charlie Morton $15 million a year, and look at the value that they got out of him. They can, put that money potentially to better use if Kiermaier's not going to be that same player. And then you look at a Brett Phillips contract situation. Obviously, with the minor league kind of deal, he'll make some sort of variety from $500 to $600,000 a year, which obviously is a lot better than 10 or 11 million. I don't have to tell you that. No arbitration until 2022. So obviously, again, in 2021 and 2022, I believe he's going to be, $500,000, $600,000, and then arbitration. You can either sign him to avoid arbitration, or it's kind of a mediator that looks at stats and things like that and determines the player's value. So anywhere from maybe $2 to $3 million if he really starts to kind of turn things around in his late 20s. So arbitration years 22 to 24, and then he hits free agency in 2025, which will be, I believe, after his age 31 season, or going into his age 31 season. So at that point, the Rays may just decide to let him walk in free agency anyway. So when you look at it that way, I think it kind of lines up where the Rays are looking at this thing. Obviously, they're going to probably give him an audition. I wouldn't imagine the Rays are going to be moving Kiermaier at the deadline. I think he's a crucial part of this team, the way it's, the outfield is constructed around him. I originally look at this trade and I'm like, oh yeah, they're still trying to do the two-man outfield, have Brett Phillips and Kevin Kiermaier, the two deep safeties. But you look at the way the contract is set up, and it can't be denied. I think the Rays kind of are telling their hand this way. And I mean, a team like, I don't know, I guess this is kind of a bad example that they wouldn't trade him to the Yankees, but a team like the Yankees, their center fielders right now is a 31-year-old Aaron Hicks, and I think a mid-30s Brett Gardner, who doesn't really have a long-term future with the team. They don't have a center field guy right now. So a team like that, obviously they won't trade him because it's their biggest rival basically right now. But a team like that's willing to give up that kind of, what do the Yankees care about paying Kiermaier $10 million a year? They're paying Garrett Cole $320, I think, over 12 years or something bizarre like that. So that kind of money doesn't deter those teams. I don't know, maybe the Dodgers, because I believe Mookie Betts plays the corners. Cody Bellinger plays center. So, you get the idea. There's contending teams that would love a platinum glove, very much plus defender out there in center field, because the Rays are proof that it really does make a difference. They've been so good as far as run prevention, not just with pitching and the low ERA, but the defensive efficiency as well. And Kevin Kiermaier has been a big part of that. But obviously the Rays aren't ever tied to anyone. They traded Evan Longoria when it seemingly still looked like he had stuff left in the tank in his early 30s, and the money that was on his contract, wasn't worth what they were going to get from him. And I think that's a good parallel as well. A fan favorite, maybe not as much so as Longoria is, but that only goes to the point of, if the Rays are going to trade Longoria, why wouldn't they trade Kiermaier? So obviously they're not afraid of doing that. I don't think Kevin Kiermaier in his, age 31, 32, 33-year-old seasons, I could be completely wrong, but as far as the Rays are concerned, I'm not sure that's worth, the $11.5, $12, or $13 million that they'll be scheduled to pay him. So obviously they're going to give him an audition at some point. I think Brett Phillips will play some center field at some point this year, and if they can get the bat working. My idea is they're probably going to look to trade Kevin Kiermaier in the offseason. And wow, just live just now off of Aroldis Chapman, Ahmed Rosario has hit a walk-off home run for the Mets. So they sweep the doubleheader, and now the Rays have a 4-game lead over the Yankees in the American League East. So as we are kind of putting a wrap on this show, thank you to Ahmed Rosario. And the Mets come through and probably sweep a doubleheader in Yankee Stadium. They were the home team designated in this one just because of the way scheduling worked out. So they had to come back from behind in both of those games. So Mets fans, I'm not sure if we have any listening to the program, but I know I'll probably be checking out WFAN at some point tonight, and fans raving about how good the Yankees are and how good the Mets are and how bad they think their Yankees are. So that'll be a good night. So yeah, good for the Mets and good for the Rays as they increase their division lead to 4 games. So that 3-game set against the Yankees next week certainly looms large, and we'll be with you on Monday through Wednesday night to talk about all that. So I've made a long story even longer as far as the Brett Phillips thing, but I think it's good to have it on the record, and I think that kind of will end up, that will be what ends up happening. Again, I don't think there's no way they trade Kevin Kiermaier at the deadline unless there's a way to get maybe Mike Clevenger and the Indians decide they want a center fielder or something like that. Trevor Bauer, which they won't do because of the way his contract is structured, but if they decide they want a big name starting pitching kind of guy because of the way the rotation is lined up right now, with Morton probably won't be back next year, Chirinos won't be playing next year, so then you're left with Snell, Glasnow, and Yarbrough. So that's 2 spots to fill. I mean, they have guys coming up through the minor leagues that can fill that role, but they could be a year or 2 away. Josh Fleming has looked nice, and they have other guys. Obviously, Brett Honeywell's coming up through the system. And a couple of guys who are slipping my mind as well. So, but outside of something like that, I don't see the Rays moving Kiermaier in the deadline, as that is only a few days away. But I think during this offseason, Kevin Kiermaier will be traded from the Rays, and Brett Phillips will be the new center fielder of the Rays. So that's that. Just wanted to get that out there. As I'm wrapping this show up and you happen to be listening and you want to maybe discuss that with me, defend Kiermaier, all that, I'm more than willing to hear that and have that discussion. The number to call while we're still on the air, it is 877-566-1020. Also, some other news, another move the Rays made during the game tonight. It was the Rays dealing right-hand pitcher Riley O'Brien to the Reds in exchange for left-handed pitcher Cody Reed. Reed is 27 years old. His major league stats are this: a 2-12 record with a .544 earned run average, 119 strikeouts over those appearances. He was a second-round pick in the 2013 draft by the Royals, so obviously a higher kind of prospect type guy. I did some research on Riley O'Brien. I think it was an 8th or 9th round pick out of Ohio. Whenever he was drafted, I think he's a little bit younger, and I think the outlook on him was he was probably about a year or 2 away from being a major league guy, and you get a 27-year-old Cody Reed. I think there was a Reds fan that was commenting on Mark Tompkin and basically saying that the Reds manager kind of just put Reed in a lot of bad spots. He's 6'4". He throws an upper 90s fastball. Obviously see the potential. And I had made a comment about this as well with Jalen Beeks going down and the way Aaron Loop has been performing. They need a left-handed reliever in the back end, and Jose Alvarado is on the injured list, left shoulder inflammation. There's been no update on him, so we don't know when he's going to be back and if he will be performing at the level that he hasn't really been at in a while. So I think that's a move. They're not going to, I think, thrust him immediately, but I think he's going to be part of their back-end left-handed bullpen. I think, they're good with guys like, Bonda and Loop for right now, but maybe slot Cody Reed in there at some point. I think they want to use him as an opener. That was the outlook. He's still going to have to go through the COVID intake testing, I guess, but it looks like they're putting him on the 40-man roster as Brett Phillips, the new acquisition from the Royals, the center fielder, He's put on the COVID-related injured list. Not that he has it or tested positive or has been exposed, but that's just the procedure, I guess, when you trade a guy. So I don't understand. But it looks like we'll be seeing Cody Reed potentially sooner and maybe in an opener in some way. He's on the 40-man right now. Also, another point about Brett Phillips, he does not have any minor league options left. So obviously, he's not going to clear waivers, obviously, because of what you gave up to get him in Lucius Fox. So he's a big league player at 26 years old. That's what he's going to be. What he is what he is, and they're going to have to live with that. They didn't give up much. Ultimately, I think Lucius Fox will be a fine player, but the Rays kind of had a logjam at that position in their minor league, so it made sense to make that move and potentially get Kevin Kiermaier's replacement. Any other notes? Yeah, it looks like maybe the Rays plan on using him as an opener. And some notes on some other guys. Charlie Morton will throw a bullpen either today, tomorrow or Sunday, and could potentially face the New York Yankees in that 3-game set. Tuesday they don't have a starter. It'll be Glasnow is scheduled on Monday, an open spot on Tuesday, and it will be Ryan Yarbrough slated on Wednesday, but it looks like he could be potentially missing some time with the left groin tightness, but there's no update on that as of right now. It looks positive as far as the outlook on him, but he may miss a time through the rotation, especially you don't want to throw him to the Wolves and the Bronx in what will certainly be a crucial game for both teams, and I think maybe the Bronx Bombers wanting to get a little bit of revenge. They're certainly not happy. They have lost, I believe, 7 straight. I want to make sure I have that right because I think they had lost 5 straight after the Rays series now. Let's see, it was for the Yankees. Yeah, the Yankees have lost 7 straight games. They now sit at 16-13, and I'd mention that as well. That with all the guys on the injured list, James Paxton, Zach Britton, Aaron Judge has gone back on. Urshela is now on the injured list. I mean, they're dropping like flies just like last year, and I had hinted maybe they'd be heading to a slump. And how sweet would that be if the New York Yankees missed the playoffs this year? Nothing would be better. They would obviously blame it on the COVID season and everything like that. But it would just, for Rays fans, I think, everywhere, it would be such a good sight to see those New York Yankees miss the playoffs, and then maybe we'd be potentially looking at a Blue Jays and Orioles playoffs team. But who knows? A lot of crazy stuff would have to happen in order for that to all line up. But again, Morton may be facing, it looks like they may have 2 of those 3 games to fill, and Trevor Richards can only pitch in one of those games. Maybe Aaron Slegers, who had 4 perfect innings, I believe, against the Yankees, could perform in such a role once again. I'm not sure if he could duplicate that performance, but a guy that has looked pretty good in kind of a, not necessarily a starting role, but kind of a dual kind of start role. So they may look at doing something like that. Also, Anderson, Nick Anderson, Chaz Rowe, and Oliver Drake, quote, all improving, and we may see them at some point next week. I think they're all ready to come off the injured list as far as the 10 days is concerned, but maybe still rehabbing a little bit. Oliver Drake, I would imagine, is going to have to see some hitters for a while in Port Charlotte. Chaz Rowe maybe as well. I don't know. Nick Anderson, I think, is going to be the minimum on the 10 days. They just kind of wanted to have flexibility and bring another guy up, so they just sent him for the formality. I think with how good he's been, they probably want him back as soon as humanly possible, but they may have him face hitters for a couple days in Port Charlotte. It's about an hour or 2 drive from the Tropicana field, so that kind of works out. And also Brent Honeywell, a Rays top pitching prospect, I believe, has gone through 2 Tommy John surgeries. Yeah, he joins the 60-man pool in Port Charlotte and will face real hitters. Kevin Cash, quote, says he still has a lot of boxes to check, but could maybe potentially come up to the big league club at some point this year, maybe if they need it. I'm not sure if that would be in a starting pitching capacity. I would imagine, I know there was a lot of talk last year before he had his second Tommy John that he was going to be a David Price circa 2008, where he was a starting pitching prospect, but he was in the back end of a bullpen, because it was a contending team and he wasn't necessarily ready to start, but, he could provide value. I think that would maybe be the outlook on Brent Honeywell if he does come up, but he would have to look good against hitters in Port Charlotte, and there is a lot of good players down there. So obviously we'll keep you updated on all that. And I believe that's pretty much all we have as far as news goes. The only thing left to do is preview the games over the next 2 days. We will not be on the air Saturday or Sunday night. The next time we will be on the air is Monday after the Rays-Yankees game from the Bronx. That game is a 7:05 start, so probably 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30 we'll be on the air. At WHBC Stream is the Twitter to follow if you want to stay updated on that. Tomorrow's game, it is Josh Fleming v. Pablo Lopez. Fleming, obviously, with a 1-0 record and a 3.60 ERA. He got a win in his first Major League start. It was a great story against the Blue Jays. He went 5 innings pitched, gave up 2 earned runs on 4 hits, gave up that home run, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, and he only threw 72 pitches. They said he was ready to throw 90 or 100 pitches, but they didn't want to let him face the order a full way through the third time through the rotation, so it makes sense. They ended up winning the game. They got him his Major League win. That was all good. He's a lefty. He gave up about a 300 average to righties in the minor leagues. That was kind of a red flag on him, so maybe that will kind of finally show its face at some point tomorrow, but hopefully not, obviously. And then we take a look at Pablo Lopez. He is a righty as well, so the Rays will be stacking the left-handed hitters. His last start against the Nationals went 5 innings pitched, no earned runs on 6 hits, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. And he has not gone too deep in a game. He's gone through 6 a couple of times, but mostly 5 inning starts. So kind of your middle of the road guy again, 3-1 and a 1.90 ERA, which is actually, when you look at the stats, pretty good. So maybe the Rays, and they've struggled kind of a little bit. Well, no, he's a righty. He is a righty. So the Rays have been better against right-handed hitters, actually. So how they would do the lineup tomorrow, obviously Josh Fleming pitching, probably Michael Perez catching again, unless Zunino is fine and they want to do righty on righty for whatever reason. But probably Perez catching again for Fleming. And then the outfield from left to right, probably Sitsugo in left. If Kiermaier is healthy, they'll put him in center, and maybe Meadows in right for the all-lefty outfield, although they haven't really done that much. It's usually Yoshi at third. And then in the infield, what I would do at least, I would put Wendell at third base, Adames at short, Brandon Lau at second, Ji-Man Choi at first, and then I would go, I guess, Yandy Diaz at DH, and then Michael Perez catching again. And the bullpen looks pretty much in play, except I would imagine they don't go Diego Castillo tomorrow. They want to keep him fresh and maybe for that Yankee series. And then Pete Fairbanks, he pitched an inning and a third, so he had 2 ups, but only threw 11 times. So I would imagine he would probably come in a safe situation instead of Castillo tomorrow. So Fairbanks got the win tonight. He's now 4-1. And then tomorrow, butterfly effect, we can't really predict, as in the way of lineups or relievers, but we can tell you that it'll be Blake Snell, the lefty, going up against the righty Humberto Mejia of the Marlins. Snell is 2-0 with a 3.04 ERA. We'll take a look at his last couple of starts. I know he's come on. He's fully stretched out now. He looks really good. His last start, against the Blue Jays was bittersweet at the end. 5 2/3, 2 earned runs on 4 hits, a home run, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts. Looked pretty electric. Again, now he's fully stretched out. I would anticipate him probably going 6 innings and maybe even flirting at starting a 7th. That would be my best guess. And then we'll take a look at Humberto Mejia. And he is 0-2 with a 5.40 ERA, right-handed. So I would imagine they'll probably stack the lefties once again, but maybe have Mike Zunino and Kiermaier out of lineup. Zunino in, Kiermaier out is what I mean, as far as that would go. He may not be fully stretched out. He's only started 3 games. His last start was 82 pitches in a 3 2/3 inning outing against the Nats. Recorded, I believe, a losing decision in that. Gave up 2 earned runs on 7 hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. So not a guy that jumps out of the page. Certainly not a Sixto Sanchez type guy that went 7 innings strong against the Rays tonight. So hopefully the Rays can at least split the next 2 games and take this series and keep their winning ways going. Obviously, with the Yankees loss tonight, the Rays improved their lead to 4 games. Above the Yankees in the American League East, so they're looking good. That 3-game set in the Bronx next week will be crucial. That is the next time, in fact, we will talk to you. We'll be talking hopefully about a Rays win in Game 1. They just torment the Yankees and all their fans, and it'll be absolutely fantastic. I mean, we may be looking at a 500 Yankees team at that point, but from all that, it was a good show tonight. I appreciate anyone who listened in. I appreciate that for sure. We'll be back again on Monday, and as always, we will see you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC